Hello and welcome to another episode of Jacob's House of Rock. And today we're doing a full review and demo of the SansAmp Tech 21 New York YYZ pedal. This is the Geddy Lee signature pedal, and it's actually a small pedal that's based on and uses the same sort of circuitry that's used in the actual 2112 SansAmp rack mount version that Geddy Lee has, the bass player from Rush, just in case you guys don't know that, has been using live on tour and stuff for the past couple of years now. So he's got amazing tone, one of my sort of most influential bass players, and one of the most influential bass players from my playing and stuff like that. And I really love his sound, and so I was just really curious to see what this thing sounded like. And yeah, I tried it out the other day and it does not disappoint. So let's just kind of go through some of this thing's features first. So here's a nice close look at the pedal itself. You can see it's a nice fairly small size, especially considering that this holds a lot of the circuitry from the original rack mount model. In fact, from what I understand, a lot of the circuitry is pretty much identical to that. The only reason it's smaller is they've designed it to be more compact, and they've taken out a couple of features, mainly to do with splitting it up into multiple channels, and a couple of things to do with EQ settings and all of that. But I'll explain what this thing does have for the moment. So nice metal shell. You can see it has a really cool little signature of Geddy Lee here, with a cool little caricature of him on the front. Very classy. It's finished in this nice sort of sky blue color, which is really cool. It really stands out amongst your other pedals. We got the master control up here. We have a drive and deep mix blend knob, so I'll get into what that does in a second. Got the low and high EQ settings. We have a mid down here, which is actually kind of interesting because I think this is actually more of a presence control than it's just a typical mid control. At least from my experience, actually messing around with it, it seems to affect some of those response of the harmonics in the distortion when you sort of mess around with the drive, which is what we go over here. And finally, we got a tight switch here, which is a cool new feature that's the only thing unique to this pedal that the rack mount version doesn't have. It's kind of, I think it's a bit of a high-pass filter that they use on this thing. It kind of tightens up the sound a lot, makes it sound a lot more brighter and a bit more aggressive, which is really, really cool if you want to get that classic Geddy Lee tone. On the back here, we've got a little 9-volt power battery thing that you can take that out very easy. Put in your battery here. I don't use batteries. I always use plugged-in pedals because I can't afford to just throw money at replacing batteries all the time. But that's a good option if you're on the go. We got these little rubber stoppers on the back, and so we got the Tech 21 thing made in the USA. So that's really cool. It's made in not made in China, which is very unique. And apparently these things use really good parts. They say that the jacks on these things are made really well, as well as the switch. The switch actually is not the same sort of typical mechanical switch that you'd use. It actually has something that has like a little tiny button that this switch, no matter how hard or how loosely you press it, as long as you go past a certain threshold, it just lightly presses the button underneath just enough so that it works. That way this isn't liable to break on you and that sort of stuff. So that's really cool. I do have a couple of other Tech 21 SansAmp products that I've got great use out of in the past. So I know that I was expecting good things out of this. I got this. This is the guitar version. The SansAmp GT2 Tech 21 New York pedal. This thing's fantastic. Basically what SansAmp are, by the way, is they basically make amp emulators. What these things are. I mean, you can use these things just as like distortion pedals, preamps, that sort of thing. But basically these are like little amps in a box, and with something like the this one, you get a whole different array of different style of amps, everything from like a clean Fender to like a classic Marshall sound to like a what would you call it, a Mesa Boogie kind of super heavy distortion and all that. And I've been loving this thing, as well as I have the the classic bass driver. This has been like a Just a really classic pedal that people have been using, although I have the programmable version here, which has like the 3 switches. And I really love this thing, but I find the programmable version of it, this one, a little fiddly. I keep kind of... It's a little bit of a pain to kind of get the sound that I want out of it consistently, and when I fiddle with the knobs I don't feel like I'm getting the exact sort of response as I would be out of a more simple pedal like this, especially for somebody who doesn't play live very much. So this one I really wanted to upgrade to just to a simpler version of it because I love the sound, but the practicality of this one was a bit annoying. That's why I picked up this thing, because I was going to get just a typical sort of bass driver one that they have, but since this one was coming out and I'm just a huge Geddy Lee fan, I just decided, you know what, let's go for this one. And another great thing about these things is they're all analog, so this isn't a digital circuit. It doesn't use digital emulation. It does emulate the warm tube amp sort of sound, is what they're really known for. To really they do it really well for solid state technology. They actually get a really good tube sound out of these sort of things. Do it with all nice analog technology and circuitry, which is really cool. Before I get more into the features, I'm just going to quickly show you what this thing came with. So it came in this cool metal box, which if you saw my unboxing you knew that I just bloody love this thing. Nice little textured top here, Tech 21 on the sides. There we go, nothing much going on underneath. And when we open this thing up, just came with a nice sticker, which I don't know what I'll do with, but I got that. It was in a plastic bag. There's some other paper in there, and it came with this cool manual, and it's also got a bunch of presets, which when we do the demo I'm going to be trying out all of these presets one by one to give you guys a nice idea of how it sounds. But yeah, let's get back to this thing. So master volume is sort of self-explanatory. It is the overall output of this pedal, how loud the sound is after all the other effects go over it. Drive here, this is how much distortion sound you get, whether you want a nice clean amp. So this is 2 channels kind of basically, and that's why it has this blend thing. And the drive one, this whole gray section that you see, only affects the drive channel. So the sound you want out of it is dependent on this one. However, the other channel, which is the deep channel, and the way we control it is with this knob, how much we want of that one, it's got a permanent EQ curve, and it's clean. So it's like a really nice sort of very studio quality, clean, very bassy, deep, clean sound. And we blend the two together with this knob. EQ settings only affect the drive channel, just to let you guys know that. So if you want to completely omit the preset of the sort of Geddy Lee's custom sort of EQ'd clean sound and just mess around with this one, you can. It'll probably sound pretty fuzzy because I think the drive is actually always has to be a little bit on, I think, in order for it to work. I don't really remember. We'll mess around with that later. So we got the EQs for it here, the high and the low. And the mid. So like I said, I think the mid is actually a presence knob more so than a mid. Like I think it affects the way the harmonics kind of react in the distortion of the sound. So I played around with this for a little bit the other day, and that's the sound, that's what I interpreted the mids to do. They don't actually work as a typical sort of mid control in like an EQ. So they kind of, you can brighten up the overall sound by just making it a more mid-focused gain sound by, playing around with this thing. So that's really cool, and it really makes this pedal really versatile for getting really unique sounds. The high and the low setting, I think most SansAmp pedals work in a really interesting way, that they have this sort of secret EQ setting that's controlled by messing around with the master volume and the low and the high. Now the way it kind of works, and I don't know if this pedal does it, but I'm pretty much certain that it does, is that there's a mid setting that's kind of always at a moderate volume, and you can play around. If you have these two at 12 o'clock, the low and the high, then it's set flat, that the mid, the lows and the highs are at the same level. However, if you start to reduce them, then the mids get louder because they're at a constant. However, when you play around with these, it kind of switches around them, if that makes sense. So just always picture 12 o'clock. There is a mid knob that's always at 12 o'clock, but it's not actually visible. And then these things you can play around with outside of that. And if it gets too quiet because you want it very mid-focused, so you like turn off the highs and the lows, for example, then you can make it louder by just increasing the master volume. And that's kind of how you play around with these sort of EQ settings on these pedals, just for you who don't know. And yeah, like I said, of course you have this mid knob, which, like I said, sounds more like a presence knob. It just affects the overall brightness of the pedal and how the distortion harmonics kind of ring out, which is really awesome. And yeah, that's about it for these features. So just to kind of let you know how I'm recording this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this pedal in, and I'm going to plug it directly into my interface, which is here. It's just a nice behringer interface, very clean sounding, works great. And I might just have a tuner pedal plugged into it, but that doesn't affect the sound at all. It'll just be off. And yeah, so the reason I'm plugging it in and recording it DI and not using it as like a typical pedal is because Geddy Lee himself, actually, when he plays this thing live, most of the time, you know, his rack mount thing, apparently most of the time he runs it direct out, so he doesn't have very many amp stacks lying around. Sometimes he would, in the last couple of shows, he does have a couple of orange amps, some nice tube amps to throw in there if the sound needs it. But from what the marketing of the people who make this pedal say at Tech 21, they say that he primarily just uses it stock direct out, and it doesn't go into any cabs or anything like that. Just the line out into the venue's speakers, basically. So that's why I'm doing it DI'd. However, this thing, I have tried it as a pedal, and it sounds just as good going into, you know, an amplifier. However, for the purposes of this review and demo, I want to give you as clean a sound as possible, as sort of, you know, close to, without, you know, hearing my various amps and cabs interfering and coloring the tone for you guys, so you know what to expect from this pedal. As for which basses I'm going to be using my lovely jazz bass here. It's a Mexi jazz bass, but I've modified it so it uses an Omega bridge, which is a clone of a, you know, what is it called? A badass bridge, which is what Geddy Lee uses himself on his jazz bass. And it's got some nice Fender pickups, so not the Mexican pickups. These are, you know, the Fender USA pickups, as well as the electronics I've swapped out, and I put some nice new strings on it today. And to help you get that Geddy Lee sound, you need some nice, fresh steel strings. These were pretty cheap ones, so I don't know how great they'll sound, but ideally you want to use something like Roto Sounds, swing bass strings or something like that, but I'm just using some cheap Chinese steel strings. They still sound awesome though, so, you know, very good. And my Rickenbacker, which I have modified by already modified now, so it has the real Rickenbacker pickups and some of the hardware in here. So for all intents and purposes, this is just a Rickenbacker bass, and that's what I'm going to be using for these demos, because, you know, this is a Geddy Lee pedal, and that's what Geddy Lee himself uses. Alright, so the first setting that we're going to be doing is called Geddy Lee's personal setting. So this one, I'm assuming, is what Geddy Lee uses in his rack mount version when he's actually performing. So let's take a good listen to it. So first of all, this is the clean. This is with the pedal off, what my bass sounds like, just to give you an idea of what the clean bass DI sounds like. I'm putting no effects on this, no compressor, no nothing. Geddy Lee doesn't really use much compression or anything with his playing at all, from what I understand, because he's a very dynamic player. So the only compression he uses is just the natural amp compression he gets from this thing to begin with. So yeah, let's take a listen. Clean sound of this nice jazz bass. I have the neck pickup turned up on full and the bridge pickup just ever so slightly turned up. You can mess around with that to get the sound you want. I also have the brightness on full as well, because he has a very bright sound. And yeah, let's get to the pedal. So clean. Pedal. So this setting is called YYZ Jazz Bass, and you can see it down the bottom there. So let's see what this one sounds like. So again, clean. And with the pedal on. Of course, we got a jazz bass. Pardon me, I haven't really learned YYZ, but I think the intro goes a bit like this. Doesn't sound too dissimilar, honestly. Pretty good. So back to the Rick. Okay, so this next setting is called Roundabout, which I'm assuming is this setting that Geddy Lee used when he filled in for Chris Squire in playing with Yes in their induction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, I don't know how to play Roundabout. It's something I really should learn. It's on my to-do list. But for the moment, we're going to play the intro to Heart of the Sunrise by Yes. So, again, the clean. And with the pedal. You know what, that sounds surprisingly similar to an actual Rick sound, so that is so cool. Let's try it out with the actual Rickenbacker. This next setting here is called the Rickenbacker setting, as you can see here. So I don't know if this setting is meant to make your jazz bass sound like a Rickenbacker, or if it's just the setting that Geddy Lee uses for his Rickenbacker bass. But let's find out. So again, clean sound. There we go. Rickenbacker setting with the Rickenbacker type bass. This setting is called Jack Bruce / Cream, so I think we all know who he is. Great bass player, so this is meant to emulate that sound. I'm going to stop doing the clean sound beforehand because this review is just going to get too long, so instead we're just going to have the pedal on this whole time. Alright, so this next preset is called Tool. So if anyone's a big Tool fan, hopefully this will kind of give you that sound. I'm a big Tool fan, so I'm really curious. I also took my jazz bass down to drop D to kind of see what sound we can get. I might even add the bridge pickup, if that might kind of help. So we'll have a look. Next preset is called Les Claypool. So he's the fantastic bass player from the band called Primus, who did actually cover YYZ, so let's give that a little go. Next setting is called Warm Tube / Studio, so I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit more of a cleaner, more conservative kind of a sound. Well, let's take a look at this. then, so those are all the preset settings that we went through in this booklet. I thought, you know, this is really cool that we kind of have these in here because it really gives us a nice range of different sounds we can get from this thing. Now, since this video is getting long, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly do just a rough playthrough, just screwing around with the knobs on this thing, seeing what kind of sounds we can get out of it. And yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of this little demo. Show you guys first what the tightness switch does. So listen to this. Whoops. The mix. This is all the way on drive. Turn the drive all the way down. Yeah, no sound. Tighten this off. Now we can play around with the mid-range control. I'll show you guys what that does. Alright guys, so that was my demo of the SansAmp Geddy Lee YYZ pedal, and yeah, this thing's actually really awesome. As you can hear there, it adds a lot of depth to the sound, and above all else, there is so much variety you can get with this thing. I definitely recommend it. Like, you can get so many different sounds, like whatever you're looking for, and the fact that these knobs work in such a particular way that you have this, you have the two channels, you have this permanently sort of nice, deep, rich, clean kind of sound that you can blend in whenever you like to add that really thick bottom end, but you also have this other drive channel that you can tweak in so many different ways. You have the standard sort of EQ settings where you can mess around with the various EQ bands. You have the drive, and you also have this sort of mid-blend type knob, not blend, mid-presence type knob here that you can really mess around with and get all sorts of different sounds. Combine that with also having this tight switch, which really gets you some really cool aggressive sounds. There's so many options for such a small pedal, and the quality of the sound sounds really good, really high. And I really like the, the fact that they gave us these sort of presets here, because that allows, somebody who's a little bit new to this sort of pedal to kind of give them a bunch of options to start off with and experiment with what this pedal can do. Because when you're faced with all these different combinations and how the fact that they all play off of each other in certain ways, that it's not as simple as like you add a low end here, you take away the highs, and that's it with an EQ. It's just they interact with each other, such as the deep and the drive all depends on how the rest of the settings are, and how you set that for how the whole thing can sound. And for some people it can be a little tedious, but the fact remains that this thing is just chock full of different sound options. You can pretty much get any sound you're looking for out of this thing. And it has that Geddy Lee tone. Like, I'm sorry my playing was a bit shitty at times here, and I really should have learned some more Rush songs. But I really wanted to get this demo out of the way so you guys can kind of get a good idea of what this sounds like, what it sounds like when you're playing, random other stuff. Because there are definitely, people have done playthroughs using this pedal of Rush songs that have done it far better than I ever could have. But I hope this review and demo has given you some idea of the different sound capabilities of this pedal, and may have helped you in deciding whether you want to pick this up or not. Because, this pedal's not cheap, but damn, it sounds good. And SansAmp and the good people at Tech 21 just keep they don't cease to amaze. So I'm really loving this thing. I'm gonna keep playing around with it while in my recording, and I'm definitely gonna make this thing a workhorse and one of my main tools. That's what I'm trying to say. And yeah, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff if you're interested in more videos like this, or if this video is helpful to you guys. Don't forget to comment below what you thought of it and all that jazz. And yeah, peace out guys, thanks for watching, keep on rocking. Bye.